Hello and welcome to the MOOC ICT Skills in Education. Today we are going to deal with the topic Teachers in the Digital Era. The teachers are one of the largest group of trained professionals in the world. In everywhere, good education requires good teachers. Teachers must learn to use the new information technologies and more will be expected of future teachers. Educational reforms intended to confront the challenges of the future must reach the educational establishment and the classroom. Awareness of this fact means that the teacher plays the key role in the future process of transforming education. The experience of recent decades has confirmed that it is not possible to continue reforming educational systems without taking the teachers into consideration, but on the contrary, it was confirmed that we cannot ask teachers to change without education itself changing. The success of educational policies depends to a greater extent on the integrated nature of their training. The regional discussions of the UNESCO's 45th session of the International Conference on Education 1996 ICE observed the professionalization of teaching activity is the best long-term strategy to improve the outcomes of education and at the same time the working conditions of teachers. Pre-service and in-service training. It should be profoundly modified so as to enable teachers to gain mastery of the whole range of educational strategies adapted to the wide diversity of learning situations with which they will be confronted in carrying out their duties. This diversity and wide range of situations can only be managed by teachers working as a team and not as an isolated individual. Teachers must learn to use the new information technologies. Teachers will be appreciated not only for their knowledge and purely technical skills but also their personal qualities. Today, teacher morale had gone down almost everywhere. Standards have dropped and commitment is slowly being eroded away. The remedy is that candidates entering teacher education programs should be selected for their moral and intellectual suitability. During their training, teachers should also be introduced to research methods as well as the use of computers. In Indian context, the rural-urban disparity is there. Many teachers work in rural communities. It was suggested that they should be offered special concessions in recognition of the difficulty faced by them. As custodians of education as a public good, the policy and resourcing of education rest ultimately with the governments, as does the direction of educational change in an evolving world. But the management of that change should involve teachers' commitment to educational change. It is necessary that a legislation so as to render laws more appropriate to the multiple roles of teachers and to grant them adequate autonomy, making it easier for them to fulfill their new roles. The necessary measures should also be taken to involve teachers in planning and developing educational programs. The enormous potential represented by new information and communication technologies to improve education was recognized. Education systems must incorporate and learn to master them in order to avoid any subservience to technology, culture, or economy, as well as any risk of the school being isolated to the fringes compared with other sections. The report of the International Commission on Education for the 21st Century remarked, "Good education requires good teachers." In addition, the terms of their sheer numbers, teachers are very important. UNESCO's World Education Report 1995 indicates that throughout the world there are 53 million teachers in primary and secondary schools alone, and this number will continue to increase. The world continues to experience constant change, there being unprecedented upheavals in the socio-political and economic domains. Internationalization, globalization, knowledge explosion and technological advances are influencing all nations and regions of the world. In the light of such change, all countries are undertaking a critical reassessment of their education systems. Education is seen as pivotal in dealing successfully with these changes, facilitating economic development, social cohesion, peace and tolerance. Since the quality and effectiveness of any education system ultimately depends upon the quality and effectiveness of teachers, one of the key successes which is attracting the attention of all countries is how best to accommodate the changing role and demands placed on teachers, which have implications for their recruitment, training, reward structure and the development of a new teacher profile. New information technologies and teachers. There is agreement from all regions that new information technologies have already began or will provide a challenge of considerable importance to education systems, schools and teachers. It is important to identify aspects of this challenge in terms of the impact already felt so that those who have not yet confronted this question may maximize the benefits and minimize the burdens. One of the features of the advent of new information technologies are simply the size and diversity. Schools and teachers are now regarded as the sole repositories of knowledge. What will be their status in future? How can and will they be relevant? If these were not enough, there is the technology attending this information explosion with its computers, language and skill demands. New information technologies provide the means for changing the face of teaching, both in systematic terms and in localized setting of the school and classroom. New information technologies bring with them new subject for the curriculum such as computer education. Teachers and methods for teaching are forced to change with the advent of new information technologies. The streamlining of administrative processes to provide better means of both storing and networking information becomes very possible with the use of new technologies. A very appealing application of new information technology in education is their application to distance education. This appeal arises from the large number of persons who can be accommodated at seemingly lower costs. The issue of cost effectiveness of distance education for teacher development requires more analysis. Changing demands. Teachers are confronted by a set of changes which lead to contradictory demands on them from society. In short, that is a commitment to education for all, EFA, an extension of the period of initial schooling, recognition of the growing importance of lifelong education, more emphasis on general education for children and young people which prepares them for life rather than providing vocational skills of specific jobs. Increasing emphasis on teamwork and cooperation. A consensus that general education should include attention to the environmental issues, tolerance and mutual understanding. There has been increasing recognition of the importance of the status of teachers. The vast majority of teachers believe that they do not receive the moral and material recognition appropriate to their qualifications and responsibilities. UNESCO recommended that the status of teachers should be commensurate with the needs of education as assessed in the light of educational aims and objectives. It should be recognized that the proper status of teachers and due public regard for profession of teaching are of the major importance for the full realization of these aims and objectives. Digital native learners versus digital immigrant teachers. With today's classrooms full of digital natives, teachers are considering how to incorporate technology and new methodology into their classrooms. Our students have changed radically. Today's students are no longer the people our educational system was designed to teach. Today's students have not just changed from those of the past, nor simply changed as has happened between generations previously. Things have changed so fundamentally that there is absolutely no going back. Today's students represent the first generation who grow up with this new technology. They have spent their entire life surrounded by technology and using computers, video games, digital music players, video cams, cell phones, and all the other toys and tools of the digital age. Are the digital immigrant teachers prepared to teach a student with such profile? As an digital immigrant teacher, what is there for me to do? How can a digital immigrant teacher update it and put up with all these constant changes? There are some of the most common questions teachers ask themselves when they reflect about their performance along with the use of technology in the classroom. What should we call these new students of today? The most useful designation it is found for them is digital natives. Our students today are all native speakers of the digital language of computers, video games, and the internet. Those of us who were born into the digital world but have at some later point in our lives become fascinated by and adopted many of most aspects of the new technology are and always will be compared to them, digital immigrants. As digital immigrants, we find rather difficult to read e-books. We feel the need to print out almost any important document. Sometimes we even phone a colleague to check if he receives the mail. But this is not just a joke. It's very serious because the single biggest problem faced by education today is that our digital immigrant instructors who speak an outdated language, that of the pre-digital age, are struggling to teach a population that speaks an entirely new language. Digital immigrants have lots of wrong assumptions because they did not practice any of these skills during their formative years. The majority of university professors and elder teachers were educated without the personal computer, smartphone, or tablet. The majority of current students regularly use these devices in school and universities. Does this gap make a difference to learning? This present paper addressed this question. The term digital native was coined and popularized by contemporary American writer and speaker Mark Prensky in his 2001 article entitled Digital Natives. Digital immigrants, in which he relates the educator's failure to understand the needs of modern students. His article posited that the arrival and rapid dissemination of digital technology in the last decade of the 20th century had changed the way students think and process information, making it difficult for them to excel academically using the outdated teaching methods of the day. In other words, children raised in a digital media saturated world require a media rich learning environment to hold their attention, and Prensky named these children digital natives. Prensky did not strictly define the digital native in his 2001 article, but it was later applied to children born after 1980. Different approaches to educate the digital natives. Due to the obvious divide set between digital natives and digital immigrants, sometimes both generations are forced to meet, which commonly result in conflicting ideologies of digital technology. The everyday regime of work life is becoming more technologically advanced with improved computers in offices, more complicated machinery in industry, etc. With technology moving so fast, it is hard for digital immigrants to keep up. This creates conflicts among respected elder teachers with the increasingly younger workforce. Similarly, parents clash with their children at home over gaming, texting, YouTube, Facebook, and other internet technology issues. Much of the world's new generation members are digital natives. There is a substantial difference between digital natives and non-digital natives in terms of how people see relationships and institutions and how they access information. Education is the single largest problem facing the digital world, as our digital immigrant instructors who speak an outdated language are struggling to teach a population that speaks an entirely new language. Digital natives have had an increased exposure to technology, which has changed the way they interact and respond to digital devices. In order to meet the unique learning needs of digital natives, teachers need to move away from traditional teaching methods that are disconnected with the way students learn today. So, technology preparation for teachers must be at the forefront of the educational reforms. However, immigrants suffer complications in teaching natives how to understand an environment which is native to them and foreign to immigrants. Teachers not only struggle with proficiency levels and their abilities to integrate technology into the classroom, but also display resistance towards the integration of digital tools. Since technology can be frustrating and complicated at times, some teachers worry about maintaining their level of professionalism within the classroom. Teachers worry about appearing unprofessional in front of their students. Although technology presents challenges in the classroom, it is still very important for teachers to understand the unique affordances these digital tools have for students. To meet the unique learning needs of digital natives, it is suggested that digital tools are able to respond immediately to the natural, exploratory, and interactive learning style of students today. Some different approaches to educating the digital native is shown in the figure. The figure shows approaches to educating the digital native. Educators need to reconsider both methodology and content. As educators, we need to be thinking about how to teach both in the language of the digital natives. The first involves a major translation and change of methodology. The second involves all that plus new content and thinking. We need to invent digital native methodologies for all subjects at all levels, using our students to guide us. The process has already begun, and this is a great challenge worth trying. After all, if we want to continue keeping our profession and be liked in the sense of the way we teach, we must embrace this migration and learn new ways. Here are some basic guidelines on how to approach teaching the digital native. Explaining objectives clearly, student-centered learning, problem-based learning, project-based learning, inquiry-based learning, active learning, asking the open-ended questions, constructivism and co-constructing, learning by doing, allowing students to find and follow their passion, allowing time for questions and sharing their thoughts and opinions, creating presentations in text and multimedia, giving students guidance, delivering material in context, creating rigor, practice through games, and so on. Digital natives' implications for education. The complex changes that are taking place in the student body have an age-related component that is most obvious with the newest waves of technology. Prominent amongst these are the uses made of social networking sites such as Facebook, uploading and manipulation of multimedia, example YouTube, and the use of handheld devices to access the mobile internet. The gap between students and their teachers is not fixed. In many ways, the relationship is determined by requirements teachers place upon their students to make use of new technologies and the way teachers integrate new technologies in their courses. There is little chance that students enter university with demands for new technologies that teachers and universities cannot meet. Students generally report that they prefer moderate use of ICT in their courses. Universities should be confident in the provision of what might seem to be basic services. Students appreciate and make use of the foundational infrastructure for learning, even where there is often criticisms as being an out-of-date and unimaginative use of new technology. Virtual learning environments are used widely and seem to be well regarded. The provision by university libraries of online services, including the provision of online e-journals and e-books, are also positively received. Students do not naturally make extensive use of many of the most discussed new technologies such as blogs, wikis, and 3D virtual worlds. Students who are required to use these technologies in their courses are likely to reject them and allow low use, and does not imply that they are inappropriate for educational use. The key point is that there is not a natural demand among students that teaching staff and universities should feel obliged to satisfy. The development of university infrastructures such as new kinds of learning environments, for example, personal learning environments, should be choices about the kinds of provision that the university wishes to make. Young students do not form a generational cohort that they do not express consistent or generationally organized demands. Digital immigrants with digital natives. Closing the gap. There is a term for people who were born before the digital age but now live in the digital age. Rightly so, they are referred to as digital immigrants. We may know them more commonly as seniors, grandparents, senior management, seasoned teachers, and anyone else of that generation. The label attached to those born during or after the digital age are the digital natives. They have always lived in a world of digital technologies. We think of them as the expert kids with programming, the ones always attached to a cell phone or other device, and the ones who are younger by definition. By contrast, the digital immigrants are those who have slowly adapted to web surfing, emailing, texting, and the instant of world of social media and on-demand entertainment. In the educational world, you can have a mix of immigrants and natives, and it may seem that a generation gap exists. But as more and more immigrants immerse themselves in the digital world, the gap is closing and perhaps disappearing. For teachers, it means developing lessons based on building horizontal solutions. There are many ways to come to a conclusion, and with access to so many means, embracing all the technology available only leads to broader understanding of the problem. Including a place for values in lessons will also allow a deeper connection to the problem and the solution. Digital natives are driven by productivity. Digital natives are driven by productivity. Their goal-oriented working style may seem aggressive and competitive, so incorporating more values in the process may be a good strategy. Now let me summarize the session. As a conclusion, technology is here to stay. Teachers must act with an open mind so that there could be a possibility of bridging the digital gap. With understanding, we can help our students navigate through the dark sides of technology. With open hearts, we can make home, school, and the workplace less conflicted and more harmonious. With consciousness, we can achieve a healthy relationship to digital technology and a healthy balance between our non-line and offline lives. The successful teachers of the 21st century will recognize that these will be an ongoing challenge. To avoid consistent frustration, they must not be at odds with the youngsters in their classrooms. Instead, 21st century teachers will accept the embedded preferences of our youngsters and adjust accordingly. Children learn best when they themselves are the virtual actors in the experience. In the actual experience, they see the things themselves directly in their actual form and hear about the things directly. Thank you for watching today's program. Have a nice day.